Hello, and welcome to our channel, Marstream, your public performance broadcast platform. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artists of Marstream by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website, themarsh.org, for all upcoming live performances. Now, enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gail Schickley. Welcome to Solo Arts Heal. Tonight featuring activist, storyteller, and teacher Monica Hunken, who creates docu-adventure plays inspired by her international bicycle voyages, a woman of action. Solo Arts Heal was born from action through the art of storytelling and performance at the intersection of education and advocacy about health and healing. From the start, we've worked in solidarity with our core artist collective, and here on the Marstream, presenting excerpts of shows that embrace the healing power of the arts over a wide range of mental, emotional, and physical challenges, and with talkbacks that offer insights and resources for our audiences. This includes the health and healing of our Mother Earth. How we treat one another and how we treat the planet is connected. Tonight, we present Brooklyn-based writer and performer Monica Hunkin, whose docu-adventure theater includes Reading the Water, Blondie of Arabia, The Wild Finish, Outside the World, and Mount Rushmore, and featured tonight, Hunker Down. In New York, she has been produced at Culture Project, Exponential Festival, The Brick, The Living Theater, Polish Cultural Institute, and Here Art Center. Abroad, she's been produced in Australia's Horsemouth Festival, the Netherlands' Die Parade Festival, Norway's Pit Festival, the Glastonbury Festival in England, among many others. And she's worked in refugee camps around the world, facilitating arts programming. She often takes her shows on tour by bicycle and has ridden through over 20 countries, while also being an activist organizer on environmental and immigration rights issues, and works as a direct action trainer with Beautiful Trouble, Greenpeace, and Rainforest Action Network. She's also co-founder of Al Limite Collective. We're going to be talking all about that right after the excerpt we're going to see now of Hunker Down. What we're about to see is a 20-minute segment from Hunker Down, written and performed by Monica Dudaroff Hunkin, originally the original iteration of the show with dramaturgy by Mahayana Landown, and it was filmed drumming in the board op by Benny Woodard. The play's still in development that Monica has revisited, inspired by our Solo Arts Heal Climate series. It's a true story from her adventure in Greenland in the midst of the tumultuous time on the tales of Occupy Wall Street and just before Hurricane Sandy hit New York. We'll be talking with Monica more about all this after the clip. And a heads up before we roll the clip, you may wish to turn up your volume a bit for this excerpt and sit back and relax and enjoy Hunker Down.
I set up camp near a pack of huskies. You guys just bark 3 times if you see a polar bear, okay? The dogs sleep outside, chained up, circling in their own little circles of filth. And they bark and howl, especially the moment before they run a sled. They cry an ecstatic cry. It's like this deep primordial whimper, and it could cut glass. And it's the only sound around. And the mountains provide an echo. So when Bent gave me a ride from the airport on the back of his snowmobile into the town of Kulisuk, it sounded like we were riding into a football stadium full of thousands of people cheering. But actually, it's just this tiny town of 250 people with their 250 dogs. At first, the cold is exhilarating. I'm living out all those childhood Julie of the Wolves fantasies. But it quickly becomes unbearable. Sharp as knives down my spine. I have to pee. but I can't bear the thought of going outside or taking off a layer of clothes. So I pee into my water bottle, but it overflows onto my blanket. So now I have these pee icicles to contend with. Somehow, I managed to exhaust myself to fall asleep with my wrench tight in my fist. At 3 a.m., I am attacked. I'm gnawing at my head, a giant paw pushing in from the other side, almost pushing the tent completely over. So this is it. I'm going out like Werner Herzog's Grizzly Man, but without a respectable German film crew to capture my last desperate moments on Earth. Slaughtered by a polar bear. I used to go visit one at the Central Park Zoo. I would stare at him somersaulting in his little blue tub and feel lonely with him. And now I'm being killed by his cousin in my own frozen pee, in a borrowed tent and sleeping bag from friends that they'll never get back because it will be ripped to shreds, and I will die alone. This foolish Pollyanna white girl camping alone in Greenland in the middle of winter, hoping to see this magical place before it disappears, whose plane flight alone and the fuel for it helped to dismantle it. She got what she deserved. But I'm not going out without a fight. No! But it's not a bear. It's just the wind. It's just a really powerful windstorm. And there above me, like some luminescent toxic spill in the sky, are the northern lights. Bright green and shifting and waving like someone is yanking on them from another side of the world. Like a ribbon dancer acid trip. The Inuit used to believe that they could see their lost loved ones dancing in the afterlife in the lights. But they also believed if you whistled up at them, the lights would fly down to earth and cut off your head. Bent takes me out on his sled to the open ice. The wind is whipping us back. The dogs pulling us, racing forward in a V. We're going to see a glacier. I have never seen one in real life, and I am not prepared. With every creak, I see my death come tumbling at me. Shelves of ice breaking under my feet into the sea. When I come face to face with the glacier, I am overcome. I've never seen anything like it. And I imagine that I'm Nicolas Cage, and the glacier is Cher from Moonstruck. We're at Lincoln Center at the Opera House, and I see Cher cross the fountain, but she doesn't see me. She spins around. A burgundy dress and shoes. She had her hair done. They took the gray out. She is beautiful, and I have everything I want in life. Bent pulls me out of my fantasy and hands me a spear. He wants us to dig out a seal from a trap. With 2 spears, we begin to throttle the ice, digging through thick, unforgiving layers, trying to hit water. The dogs are humping or watching other dogs hump, and they get frozen together and get back to back and wait for it to unstick and fall out awkwardly, unromantically. Ben tells me, my kids leave. More than half of Kulusuk leave. There's no fish here. What can we do? I don't want to leave. Here, I'm free. I like to be free. But there's no food, so what can we do? We dig. Silently, breathing hot blooms in front of our noses. It feels like being a grave robber, like digging up a dead body in broad daylight. And secretly I'm thinking to myself, please don't let there be a dead animal in that net. No, Monica, please let there be an enormous fat seal for his family to eat. Don't let them starve. But don't let it be full of toxins like I saw in that documentary Silent Snow about that Inuit woman, Pippa. Pippa, who was afraid of having kids because she couldn't help but notice how toxic her homeland was getting. Brave Pippa, who travels around the world looking for the places to blame for sending all these toxins into the ocean up to her homeland. In Africa, where the government forces people to spray DDT on the walls of their homes. In India, in California, where my father got poisoned by heavy metals, where his hands and feet couldn't work anymore, which eventually killed him. All the trash we throw out, toxins, cleaning fluids, birth control, fracking fluids, all the trash I threw out that never disappeared like I thought it did. And the way the currents and the temperatures work in the ocean, everything just flows up north to the sink of the world, to the Arctic, and gets frozen in the ice. But now that so much of that is melting, it's been getting stuck into the fat of these animals. It's been sitting in this Greenlandic seal waiting for this family to ingest it into the puffy cheeks of their little children who will grow up with lower IQs and will have heart problems and will probably die, and I am a part of that. The ice breaks. Bent and I pull the net inch by inch, and out slides this frozen little seal pup with its paw stuck in this angle like it was waving its last goodbye to the world. It's already been pecked at by scavenger fish. The dogs start to lunge at it, ready to rip it to shreds. We tie it to the back of the sled, and I sit right in front of it, feeling sometimes the tickle of its whiskers right up against my back. We head into town, leaving a trail of blood as we go. When we get back, Ben starts to cut up the seal and give some pieces of the meat to the dogs, and their growling and barking is blood-curdling. And I have to leave and go off alone, and I run off to the cemetery, and I step on thin ice, and it cracks, and I fall into freezing cold water. I don't want to be here anymore. This is a brutal place of death, and I don't want to go home. I'm not ready to face the inevitable. I don't know where to go. I feel a hand on my shoulder. It's bent. He tells me, when you cry, the plants will cry with you. They will get stronger from your tears, and you will feel better. Come. You will meet my mother, Anna. Anna's house is bright yellow, full of antiques. There's this one newspaper cutting of a young Inuit man, proud, with this massive scar ripped across his chest, and a large photo of a young woman with this bell of black hair on top of her head. These beads tight around her long neck. Come in! Sit down! I'm Anna! I'm not nice lady. Anna is a tiny, pale woman with short, cropped black hair and silver sprinkles and a strong face. Did you see that statue behind the church? That was my mother. Beautiful, wasn't she? I used to be beautiful like her. My hair up high on my head like that. This photo, that is my father. That scar on his chest, he was just attacked by polar bear. But he survived. I survived too. He fought. I'm strong like him. I am not nice lady. I've been to your homeland, America. I am the last drum dancer. Don't you know me? Look me up on the Google. I used to sing and perform around the world, but not now. I can't sing anymore. Anna has a coughing fit. Don't get me water, stop! She lights a cigarette. Nothing to be done. I'm sick. The cancer. You will stay here. No saying no. Anna brings out a plate of dry fish, and we eat in silence, ripping up the flaky meat, making a mess all over the table. Anna says, "What was I saying? My husband. An American soldier fell in love with me, and he brought me all the way to North Carolina. But did he make me happy bride traveling free? No. He beat me black and blue. I was in a cage. He made me a slave, but I escaped. And I came back to my homeland, and I would climb up the tallest mountains, and I would sing and scream at the top of my lungs, I am free! I am free! I've been to Anna's house now for a week, and they just accepted me into their home without any question. It felt so natural. I have my own room. I eat all my meals with them. I taught their granddaughter how to do headstands. It's Easter Sunday, and we are going to service at the tiny little wooden church, and Anna gets all dressed up. An elegant woman. She reminds me of my grandmother. The ritual of the perfect necklace, the perfume, the gentle, demure, coiffed hair. The choir sings traditional Christian hymns, but in that soft Inuit tongue. I look over at Anna, and she's silhouetted in stained glass. Her face is stoic, but she begins to cry. And then her body starts to shake with a coughing fit. I place my hand gently on her back, hoping that I can give some life force, some energy to this woman who has given so much and had so much taken away from her. On my last day in Kulisuk, I sang a song that I wrote for Anna and her family as a way to express my gratitude. And Anna disappears, and then she comes back down the stairs, and she's fully dressed head to toe in her traditional gear, in this sealskin dress that she's hand sewn and beaded beautifully. And she performs a ceremonial drum dance for me. And her family is moved to tears. They haven't seen her dance or perform for years. And as I'm watching her, I'm wondering and hoping that I'm not witnessing the last drum dance in Greenland. I make it back to Brooklyn just a couple days before Hurricane Sandy, a major superstorm. And I'm trying my best to be responsible and to hunker down, or as I joke to my friends, Hunkin Down. But I get stir crazy and I have to run outside into the storm with friends. And all of Brooklyn is ours. It's completely empty except for trash cans rolling by like tumbleweeds and metal roofing flying through the air right past our noses. We're straddled atop this fence by the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and the water of the East River is rising up, touching our feet, almost sirens in the distance. And I stare across the East River, and then this giant blue light flashes, and there's Lower Manhattan completely black. And I feel this urge to run. I want to run as fast as I can to go high to the Williamsburg Bridge, like animals when they feel the warning vibrations of the earth. To just go up, go as high as you can, go. There you are, Wall Street, flipped off like a bad child in timeout. All the pain and suffering and destruction you've brought to the world, for what? For money and power. I don't know what to do. We've lost so many fights. So many pipelines have been built. We've done everything that we could, been in and out of jail. It feels like watching someone die. I bike into the Rockaways nearly every day, either alone or with a group of activists to volunteer and help clean up the wreckage. Piles of debris, sidewalks sunken into the earth like quicksand, houses demolished like they were made of straw, mounds of trash everywhere like funeral pyres, like Joan of Arc might emerge in a burst of flames. We head down into basements, into people's homes that are knee-high with muck and water, and we pick through to see if we can find anything salvageable. Passport, prom dress, photos of children laughing, pieces of your life, mold like blue sea coral. It feels strange to go into people's homes and stand in the muck with them, look through the remnants of their lives. It's so intimate. This one family even invites me to have Thanksgiving with them. We enter one basement and the man there doesn't say anything to us when we come in. He just stares wide-eyed, silent. But we get to work, throwing bags of trash, of debris out onto the sidewalk, again and again. And the man starts loosening up and he's singing now. I'm so tired of being alone. I'm so tired of on my own. Won't you help me, please? And he says, you know, I didn't say anything when you came downstairs because I have my family and we have always been on the side of helping people. We've gone to disaster sites on the front lines and we've helped people pick up the pieces of their lives. And when I saw you all come downstairs, I realized what had happened to us. That I'm on the other side now. It's all so fragile. You can lose everything in an instant. There's so much disappearing in the world. And I wonder what will happen to this man and his family, to my family and to Anna's family in Greenland. When I watched Anna dance, I felt like I was watching the unraveling of a people. I was changed. We all are changed. We have become a community of strangers mourning together, inextricably bound to one another, whether we wanted to or not.
Beautiful, Monica. Please welcome Monica Hunkin. So good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Turn up my own volume.
Can you see me and hear me?
I can indeed, and I think you'll be spotlighted with me in just a moment. Here we are, good. It's lovely to have you with us. Thank you for joining us, and what a beautiful piece. Thank you for putting that together. I know we're still in the middle of trying to be live, and it's hybrid and putting things together. So that was really really beautiful. You put that together, and I see from the credits that it was performed on occupied Lenape, Canarsie, Muncie land, which is where you are in Brooklyn.
Crown Heights, Brooklyn, yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think it's good to have that information on there. And I want to give a quote here that I read from New York Theater. Monica Hunkin is not only fearless on stage, she is fearless in life. And I think this excerpt and those we're going to be talking about certainly highlights that, when you were in the bitter, freezing cold of Greenland and just trying to pee and afraid to, and in a tent. Oh my God, how freezing that must have been. But how thrilling.
Yeah, brave or foolish, Gail, I think is the question.
I've been up in Alaska to see the glaciers there, and it's really thrilling to see the glaciers. What was that like for you?
Well, like I said, I felt like it was shared. So I think that was one of the ways I could imagine it. It was, just unparalleled. It was something I've never seen, and when you see that in real life, it's just, it's just overwhelming. It was magnificent.
It is. In fact, I didn't realize how, the crevices are so deep in the glaciers, so you certainly don't want to fall into one of those crevices that are a couple 100 feet deep. And they're all, they're melting, and the Arctic is melting. And we know this is going to happen. So our sea level is rising. It's great concerning. You are so much more than just a writer, performer, storyteller, because indeed you are an adventurer, an activist, a teacher, and a bicyclist. So I want to hear about all these wonderful aspects of your life, and I want to talk about some of your other shows, but to talk about Hunker Down a little longer, because this is really one of your main climate shows, is it not?
Yeah, I think it's the only one, and I'm grateful for this opportunity to do it, because I did it like a first rough draft invited audience version of it a few years ago, and I haven't touched on it since then. And then when I got referred to this festival, and I saw, well, that's a chance for me to come back to that, and it just continues to be more resonant, and with how things are with climate chaos. So it was a good chance for me to look at that material again.
I'm so glad you did, and grateful you did. As you wrote in, I think I saw on your website, it is a true story of fight, loss, and love through a climate disaster sonata, from dog sledding in the dead of winter in Greenland to the front lines of New York City. We didn't see in this clip, but it had to do with resistance against fracking, and then ultimately swept into the height of Hurricane Sandy. And you ask, will we sink or swim as the universe hurls its arrows at us, as the water reaches our doorsteps? So as an activist, what do you tell people about what to do do you have specific advice, or is it rolled up in your shows, really, in what you're showing?
I mean, for this show, I think it's a hard show to like make. I think for me, making art about climate change, I find really difficult. And I think there's a lot wrapped up in that, in how it's so dire and it feels so urgent as any social issue. It also can feel didactic or like preaching. But I think also it's dealing with facing this sort of innate discomfort and fear that humans have about facing their real relationship and their accountability to the earth and to air and water. And that most, especially in the United States, that a lot of Americans are used to being conquerors. And so to deal with this concept and this idea of the earth conquering us, I think is very scary. And I think that it's a hard thing to communicate through art in a way that people can take it in. So I don't know if I'm doing that or not. It's just, this is something that I can tell my own story, and being there and bringing that to other people in hopes that they think outside of their borders, and what their actions and the actions of the ruling class and of corporations that they can have influence over, that what they're doing to their other parts of the world. And that largely, indigenous people are always having their land being destroyed by other people and having to face the consequences of other things, when they should just be able to be stewards to the land. So if this piece, or if any of these pieces, help communicate some of those ideas and make it accessible through personal story, then that's good.
Indeed. You said you saw Northern Lights up there, the glacier.
I
Right?
didn't know what it was at first. I was concerned. So I was like, oh, that's really scary and really green and toxic. And then I realized what was happening.
That it wasn't toxic. Yeah, I've always wanted to see those someday. I'd love to go there. And you also mentioned in your clip, why no food? They had no food. Why would there be less fish? Or
there's the ice is melting, the polar bear. Like, one of the first things people said to me when I got there was that you have to have a gun going around, because polar bears were starving as well, and they were coming into town, which they didn't normally do. And that's why I was so afraid when I was camping. They really felt like the wind was so strong, it felt like a polar bear. But there's just a lack of resources, that all the animals are all fighting over the same things.
Right. So, but the fish populations are still there. It's just that the polar bears are particularly suffering, and the larger animals, I think, that very sadly are predicted to go extinct because of that. Other large land animals as well.
Yeah, and a lot of the animals are being made toxic by, all the pollution in the world.
As we all are.
Yeah.
I'm afraid. So, so I so admire the work that you're doing, because I really think that, telling our stories really brings it home to people. They can really see and feel what it is like. And then you go and talk about Hurricane Sandy, that you were also in the middle of, and something that affected all of us. And I hearing about the devastation of Hurricane Sandy, just this past weekend, I was riding through Tahoe and just saw so many burnout houses and land. And, I think in California, we've had over 2 million acres just this year burned, with over about 7,600 fires. It's hard to believe. So it's a worldwide phenomenon, and something that we all need to bring attention to, and also see, what is it that we can do to maybe assist in these, in this world, to help make it better. you, oh, I do want to say, as we're at the top of the hour here, I want to remind the audience about our tip jar, because funds are still greatly needed as we continue to navigate the constraints of the pandemic. No donation is too small or too great, and we're very grateful to you for your support. And I also remind our audience that you may and are encouraged to post comments and questions in the chat. Whether you're on Zoom or YouTube, the comments and questions will get to us with our marvelous producers. So please don't hold back. We love to hear from you and have any questions that you may want to ask. And so I want to start by asking you, how did you get started in creating autobiographical shows? You have very many shows. The first one that I had seen of yours was Mount Rushmore, about your father. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, that's some people could say it's about my father. It's about my mother, actually. But the first show, well, okay, I'll talk about Mount Rushmore, and then I'll go to Reading the Water, which was my first show. So Mount Rushmore is a play that I'm developing still right now. It's current. I just performed part of it in Greece, in Athens, where there were fires too. It's everywhere. It's inevitable. And that play is sort of different from the other shows that I've done in that it's not all true. There's a moment in the show where it has these reimagined circumstances where it's very interactive with the audience, and I get the audience to sort of transform the theater into a time machine, and we go back in time and create this new storyline for my mom, and it's with a live punk rock band, and there's songs intermixed, and it becomes this whole like attempted assassination story of Ronald Reagan, and just all sorts of things like that come up in this imagined world. And then sorry, go ahead.
And you're focusing on the fact that your mother had become very conservative after your father died, or maybe she already had been, but she had become a very avid Reagan fan. And you are looking at hoping that you might help her see a different side.
Yeah, just to see a different perspective, and mainly it's to give her a friendship in that time, and to give her support and someone to listen to not feel so isolated, and to deal with that fear.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the first show that I did, which began all of this, going back to your question, was Reading the Water. And that show, I didn't seek out doing solo shows. It's something that I didn't imagine myself doing, but I ended up going on this trip back to I'm from California, actually. And so I went to Thousand Oaks and to Malibu, where I grew up in Thousand Oaks. And my father worked in Malibu at Hughes Research Laboratory, and he was exposed to heavy metals there. And I mentioned that just a little bit in this show, but I didn't know much about him growing up. It was something of a mystery because he died when I was very young. And so I had this opportunity when I was out in California to really research and to go and interview people at the facility that he worked at, and see the one box that my mom had of his documents and things. And then I learned about this story of how he was exposed at his workplace to something that he wasn't even working with directly. And the company was at fault, and he found out he was getting sick, and he tried to get them to fix it and to make it safer conditions for the workers, and they wouldn't. And they it was a situation where they would fire you or transfer you if you made any kind of hubbub about things. And so he eventually took them to court as he was dealing with worsening health. He and my mom did, while my mom was pregnant with me. And he didn't know still what was wrong. He didn't know he had cancer. And then finally he found out, and then he died in the middle of the trial. And then my mom continued the case, and then she lost and she got nothing.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. It's a unfortunately a very common situation that happens, where corporations don't value the lives of even the people who work for them.
Mhm.
And so that when I found out that story, and I found out how my father and my mom fought to make a change, and how fascinating the scientists were that he worked with, and just it was just such an amazing story. And I really understood my innate push against capitalism and against corporations and authority. And I'm like, oh, that's where that's all rooted in. And I needed to tell his story because it had been silenced. And
Mhm.
so I thought I'd make a documentary or a book. I was like, well, I'm a theater performer. I should just make this a show and make it be simple and storytelling. And then I started to use that as a vehicle to teach people about fracking, because what he was exposed to is also a chemical that's released in the fracking process too. And that started me on my journey of organizing against fracking and fossil fuel infrastructure, which has been ongoing for many years now. And it's a very difficult subject to engage people in. And when people were just learning about what fracking was, horizontal gas drilling, it just sounded unbelievable. So I
Yeah.
started to use this as an educational tool for that too, and to use this personal story as a way for people to understand.
Yeah, it feels like we're cracking up our mantle. It just is the way it goes in horizontal and cracks all the rock in order to squeeze out the oil. It's a very odd and interesting scientific procedure with a lot of toxic waste at the end of that. And the concern is our water supply, the leakage of these chemicals. We don't know what they all are because they are kind of a secret of Halliburton, I believe it is, that has the fracking cocktail or whatever you call it.
That was
So,
the
so we,
Halliburton loophole in 2005 that allowed them to make the chemicals secret.
yes, and I think we've learned of some of them, but we don't know of all of them. And yeah, they harbor that as a corporate privacy, and we don't know what it all is. But these things eventually will come to light. I have confidence in that, and a lot of concern about our water supply and how it's affecting us. Yes. So you did that show, and then tell us about some of your other shows. That was the first time you did a solo show, when you did that.
That's the first solo show that I wrote. The first solo show I did was in high school, was The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe.
Lily Tomlin's great, fabulous,
Which
wonderful
gave
show.
me a slight taste for it. Luckily, I had a really amazing drama teacher in high school who entrusted me with that. And that, yeah.
Did Lily get to see you?
Oh, no, it was high school.
You never know. She's pretty great. Yeah, I saw it years ago. It was a wonderful show, and written by Jane Campion, is it?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, not written by her. Yes, performed by her.
And performed by Lily Tomlin. Absolutely. So so wonderful. So you're involved from the very outset. And what are some of your, tell us about some of your other shows.
There's another show. So my family is endlessly interesting to me for material. So there's another show, The Wild Finish, which is about my grandfather, Leonidas Tudor-Fosotinsky, who escaped from a concentration camp in Casablanca and came to the States, and started doing Polish theater here, or bringing Polish artists and Polish theater into the States and into New York, and then to California, and set up a studio there, and sort of had this cult following. And he was just a really fascinating, amazing character. And I biked across Poland to learn about my ancestry and to learn about my homeland. And I just had his old address book, and I just, went and, some people were still around at the same addresses, and I would just go and knock on doors like, hey, did you know my grandfather? Hi. And ended up taking a workshop with Rena Borecka, one of the last living members of the Grotowski company. My grandfather worked with Jerzy Grotowski, and that's where a lot of my training comes from. And so it was just this wild adventure there, sort of scratching the surface and learning about his story and weaving in and out of that.
And do you speak Polish?
No, just a very little.
Enough to get by. You got by.
Enough to get by, yeah. But so that, and
but biking across Poland, I mean, I can't believe that. What are some of the bike trips you've taken? You've gone across the US,
through the Middle East, through Europe, through Morocco and Eastern Sahara, a lot in Europe, also in Indonesia.
Where in Indonesia were you?
I was in Jakarta.
Ah, very good.
Yeah. And yeah, I've been very lucky, and I've been able to, because my shows are fairly simple, I've been able to just pack up what I need on my bike and go and bike from festival to festival and have what I need to do it, and either camp out or stay with people. And yeah.
What kind of bike do you have?
Oh, it's just a regular road bike. It's
really nothing
but it's actually named after Pipaluk, who I mentioned in the story, who was one of the people that inspired me to go to Greenland. She was an Inuit documentary filmmaker, and she's the one who created this film because she wanted to have kids, but she was nervous watching what was happening to how toxic everything was getting and the food source was getting. And so she traveled around and documented the sources of those pollutants.
Oh, good.
I met her when I was in the Netherlands. I went to the film screening and got to speak to her about that, and was determined to go to Greenland at some point.
That's fantastic. I'd love to go there. And Blondie of Arabia, you bicycled across 3 countries, a beautiful blonde woman alone. How did that work?
Well, I used to work for this high-end catering company in New York, and we ended up getting this gig to cater the royal wedding party of the Sheikha in Doha, Qatar. And so I was the sanitation captain for this massive $25 million party, and on the palace grounds in Doha. And I brought my bicycle, and I just told the catering company after the gig, I was like, just leave me here, and I want to see this part of the world. And then I started off on this trip, and it was just before the Arab Spring, luckily. So I got to see Syria, which is a beautiful country. Like people won't see on the news, they'll only see the devastation, but it was really one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to. And the people that I met there were incredibly generous and kind. Throughout the Middle East was my experience.
It's good to hear that, because of propaganda we hear on both sides in terms of people, where they're from, not being, whether Iran or Syria, or as if the people aren't good there. And, people are good everywhere. I think it's the minority that the minority of bad leadership that kind of messes us up. But, I think we do have good people everywhere. And the Arab Spring, I think it was Prince Charles that first really made public the notion that the problems had to do with climate change there. That so many people were moving in, millions of people without water and food had to move because the temperatures were going up to unbelievable levels, and people started moving into the cities. Am I right?
That's one of the causes. Yeah, for sure. There's massive soil erosion, drought, all across the land. Yeah.
So we're dealing with issues of climate change all over the world, and some very more drastic than others as the temperatures rise and the waters rise. And here you are, you're doing autobiographical shows, but you also bring performance into activism, and you have quite a bit about it. And our time always flies by so fast. So do tell us a little bit about your liminal archive and the work with your Limite Collective, how you bring performance into activism. I know you've already also worked with the Rainforest Action Network. We had quite a few links that you had suggested that might be posted, including the non-BK pipeline, Beautiful Trouble, and the Rainforest Action Network, and the is it the Sane Energy
Project?
Sane Energy Project. Yeah, please give us some information about those, and some of these can be posted and already are posted in the chat.
Oh, you just asked me so many things. What?
I know, I did. But, you know, I see our time is we don't have a lot of time. So maybe just talk to us about your collective.
Okay.
And I do have a question for you also. If you have any advice for young performers who are wondering how they can develop as an artist and respond to climate change. There's a lot of, they could look up your collective.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of where to begin, Gail. What's the question again from the audience?
Do you have any advice for young performers who are wondering how they can develop as an artist and respond to climate change?
Oh, geez, that's a big question. I mean, I think the first thing is to just really look first at what affects you, what impacts you personally, what do you care the most about that is you know, in your wheelhouse to speak about, and is there something that is polluting your own community or your neighborhood, a story that needs to be told that isn't being told by larger media outlets, that you have that capacity to bring that story forth, and to look at that first, because we could get overwhelmed just looking at like, oh, what's the most important thing to be told, or what's the most interesting thing to tell a story about. But it doesn't matter if it's not fascinating to you and vitally important to you and your community in some way, as one thing. And as a way to develop as an artist, so many things. I mean, I guess if you're thinking about writing your own work and are looking into that, Reading the Water was a good way for me to start to train myself as a writer, because I hadn't written really much theater before that, especially not a whole full-length solo show. So I used a lot of the direct quotes and interviews from people. I was filming people and interviewing them, and that having the natural rhythm of how people speak, that gave me a way to start to understand how to write in a talking way, in a communicative way that's more theatrical than just a written way. Like if I'm writing a book or an essay or something like that, getting it off the page and getting it in your body. Like I always, like, people have different practices, but I always like to work in the body first and get on my feet as quickly as possible. That's for one question. And then for activism in theater, or using performance in activism. So I'll do like more traditional plays that are, like this, that are inside theaters, but that's within a controlled space. And so it's very interesting for me to, and I think there's value in that, because theater allows you to be in a space of incubation and to escape, or to be able to really sit and saturate and allow a story to flow through you. And that's beautiful and powerful and amazing. But there's also something to be said for theater as a disruption, performance as a disruption in spaces that are like these sanitized, like sacred, like fake sacred spaces of capitalism and of the ruling class that need to be disrupted with different narratives and different stories, as a way to shift the power dynamic, because so many of these spaces, like corporate boardrooms and headquarters and bank lobbies and these places like that feel impenetrable, and they let you know that they're like these castles that hold the decision makers, and that we have to be outside of that and outside of that process. But that's a bunch of bunk, and we should be involved in that process. The people should be involved in having autonomy, and especially the people who are at the front lines and are dealing with, you know, the impacts, the first impacts of climate change, of social issues. And so I love to do performances like inside major hotels where CEOs are having private meetings, and to find a way to there and to create a performance that interrupts that, or inside a bank lobby or at sites of injustice, and to find ways that that bring a new story into that space. And there's something different that theater can do than just protest can do, in that it can capture the imagination. And I think that activism and protesting, I've been organizing for 20 years and have definitely been burnt out and dealt with that. But there's something about art and theater as a tool for activism that I find it's bottomless for the amount of energy that it supplies you with, because you are tapping into the imagination and the hearts of humanity. And that can take you anywhere. And then to your third question, are we good on time?
No, we're running out of time, but please go ahead with the third point.
So then the last thing about Al Limite Collective. So that's a theater company that I helped co-found, and that was made by a group of people that were in the living theater together and performing together for many years. And then we branched off and created our own group. But we had these years and years of training and of doing these sorts of performance disruptions. And we worked a lot at borders, at like the name Al Limite means at the limit. And that's because we were working in Tijuana and working at refugee centers and sites, you know, right at the border there in Tijuana, where on the wall there was graffiti that said that at the limit, that we are at the limit in so many ways right now, that humanity is at the limit. So we do work that is very much process oriented. It's a lot about the workshop intensives. It's a lot about creating and giving tools and having discussion and dialogue with the community, whether they're artists or not, and being in space with them and holding space together and seeing what issues are they really interested in, and then creating pieces together. And usually they'll create their own pieces, and then we'll support them in performing them out in the streets. And that's something that we've done all around the world. And the company is international and are made up of international people. Oh, are we out of time?
So people can contact you through that Al Limite Collective that is posted here in the chat. They're interested.
Yes. If I don't respond, someone from the company will. Yeah. And we have a show right now, Liminal Archive, and you can read more information about it there too.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I think we have the website up there too. Are there any other closing comments or remarks that you would like to make that we didn't cover? The time goes by so fast, and perhaps we can have you on at another time and see another one of your shows.
I guess I would just like to say that I hope people listen to Indigenous leadership. If I want to leave with anything, I think to honor the earth and honor the Indigenous people of the land, and to really fight for them when they ask for support, like with Line 3 fight in rural Minnesota right now. People are fighting there, to go and support them in that fight. That we have a lot to owe to the stewards of this land, as colonizers here, and that's really important to understand that, and all the Native people of the world to honor them.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful point. Well, a very special thank you, Monica Hunkin, for your inspiring and beautiful work, inspiring action for environmental and social justice around the world, and you're bicycling around the world. It's just stupendous and wonderful. So I'm very grateful you took the time to join us tonight and tell us about your work. We can, audience, please look for more at monicahunkin.com and on the Marsh Stream and YouTube platforms at themarsh.org. And next month, Solo Arts Heal presents ANCAN founder Rick Davis, and I'll be hosting a special new Solo Arts Heal and climate show. So look for Solo Arts Heal Wednesday nights on the Marsh Stream, along with all the other wonderful programming that's happening here. So with thanks again to Monica and to Marsh Stream producers Kristen Scheel, Brianna Caver, General Manager Brian Williamson, and our Artistic Director, Executive Director Stephanie Wiseman, and always to our Zoom and YouTube audiences. Very grateful to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. We're all in this together. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Good night, Monica. Good night, everyone.